Welcome to the Cookbook, where we invite guests on to share the ingredients of what has helped make them the successes that they are. All of it, the good, the not so good. You're not going to find anything half-baked here. And our kitchen gets messy sometimes. That's when the fun starts. So come on and join us. Okay, so hey, there are times when we all could use a little extra help and support in our lives. Whether there's something you're struggling with or just seeking connection with other people who understand what it's like to be in your situation, Anovia Behavioral Health can help. Anovia is a subscription-based organization that provides unlimited access to a wide variety of educational, experiential, and therapeutic support groups that are led by live expert facilitators. Now, you can get 20% off your membership with the discount code Cookbook20 when you subscribe. Check it out today at AnoviaBH.com. Anovia, feel better. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cookbook. I am your host, Iris Goldfeder, and I am super excited about my guest today because, okay, so this is cool. So Nate is unlike anyone that I have had on here before. Nate is a psychic, but he's also an entrepreneur. So I love the way that these two things kind of gel together. So I'm going to read his bio, and then I'm going to bring him on. So this is, according to Nate on his website, I was born with psychic abilities. The moment I knew I had a gift was when I saw my grandmother passing the day before she crossed to the other side when I was a teenager. In my 20s, I started to learn the tarot and perform readings. In my 30s, I learned the Lenormand Oracle, and I used the Oracle as my primary tool for readings. If I got that wrong, let me know when you come on, Nate. In my 40s, I opened up to mediumship and started to connect with the deceased. I also decided to learn and practice magic with a K. More often than not, a reading becomes a diagnostic for some work to manifest the third wish. I will get into that as well. I can help you with making your own spell, make the spell for you. My clients include all types of people, from celebrities to everyday people looking to improve their lives, to me, from 20-year-old to 80-year-old. I have performed thousands of readings over the years, mostly directly with clients or as an invited guest for events. I was the official psychic at Hotel Triton in San Francisco, where I was doing readings in the hotel lobby for a year. I particularly enjoy business readings to the point that I have been called the business intuitive. And I'm just going to tell you, that ain't a lie, because he has been so right on with my stuff. I have a business degree and experience as a business executive. I speak the business language, and I'm able to help with marketing, hiring, sales decisions. My belief system is multiple. I was born with a Catholic background. I also believe that spirits who crossed over are still with us. I believe in the law of attraction. My guides and spirits are deeply rooted in water magic, like the ocean, the rivers, the lakes. I particularly rely on amphitrite to help me when I read. Another influence for me is the Celtic tradition. And if my mindfulness coach is listening, I'm very connected to Celtic. Born in France near the Brittany area, I am particularly connected to the Celts. I just said that. Okay, so without further ado, let's meet Psychic Nate.
Hi, Aris. How are
Hi.
you?
I am amazing whenever I'm around you, so I'm like amazing right now.
Oh,
So,
thank you. That's so nice.
well, I mean, it's true. So just a little history on you and I. I was working with my friend Hayden, who introduced me to Nate. And since then, Nate and I have been on calls, and then he'll do my reading, and then we talk about life for, hours. And it's like, oh my God, he's like 5 hours ahead of us. So yes, but he's wonderful, and he's extremely intuitive. I mean, you blew my mind a couple of times. So, so let's talk about you. Let's hear your story.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said in the bio, I think there are a lot of people that are intuitive. I think actually, at the end of the day, we're all very intuitive. We have this gift. It's a little bit like a workout in a sense that some people practice it more than others. Some people rely on it more than others. But I believe we all have this gift. I believe, very aware of my gift very early, as I was experiencing different paranormal activities, and I've always had this passion for card reading. That's really, like you said in the bio, was really my entry point into the paranormal and the other side. And but at the same time, I was also very passionate about business, and I was good at school, and so I for a long period of time, for almost 50 years, I've been very much focused on going to business school, learning business. I've always had a passion for that. Like you said, I was born in France, but I moved to the US in 2000, and work on different companies. I've worked in different industries. I was mostly working on logistics, operations, supply chain, so very technical field in the business area. But at the same time, I've always had this passion of intuition, and how things that we're constantly experiencing, personally, seeing visions, having premonitions, doing readings for myself most of the time, uh, and also kind of most people do, like helping friends and family, just experimenting the gift, so to speak, while at the same time being in the business world, to being like in my final job. I was a C-level executive to a large publicly traded company, working directly with the CEO day in and day out, and actually not having told much about my own gift, even though during all those years, obviously I was using it for myself. I could see what would happen, so it's like an extra tool that you have. You can read people, the outcome of certain projects, so it really gives you a leg up.
Oh yeah, no
you
kidding.
know
Like, yeah, we probably
for
shouldn't
yourself.
take that job. Or yeah, let's take it. Let's take it.
Like, it's funny, like, for example, even interviewing people, trying to hire people, was also a very useful tool, because you could see them developing in a job of not working. I remember towards the end of my career, I had direct reports who were hiring people, and they were asking my opinion. And I remember, oh, I don't think this person's going to work out. And but the hiring manager, who was reporting to me, said, but I really want to hire this person. And I said, I'm not here to tell you, you have to learn. And then she would hire the person, and the person wouldn't work out.
Right.
And he would come to me and say, you're right, it didn't work out. And I would just say,
Of course,
well,
so I was.
you know I would just say, just focus on that learning experience for whatever that means. So I was really, I think, being in this world, or getting messages, uh, it's been really, really helpful. I can remember another anecdote, because I think anecdotes are always interesting.
Yeah.
uh, I was on a business trip to select a vendor, and it was a big responsibility, and I had to pick between three or four. And so the first one didn't go that great, the second one didn't go that great, third one didn't go that great. We arrived right at the entrance of the building of the fourth one, and I really had a very, very strong feeling, something completely unrelated, which was about breast cancer, which is like completely unrelated. And it was very disturbing to get this vision and feeling because it's like unrelated. Is it someone from my family? What is going on here? And so we arrive in the meeting room, and there was like entrepreneurs, uh, and within like 2 minutes, the lady says, I've just recovered from breast cancer. I'm a cancer survivor. I recovered from breast cancer.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. So I don't have to worry. And I know this is the right vendor, but this is how I knew, like a completely different way.
So
And
totally
so
unrelated, but
totally related.
wow.
Um,
God, that's
another,
crazy.
and I think it was coming back, because it was far away. It was in a foreign country. Flying back, I remember on the plane, and it's interesting for me because obviously over 40, 50 years, you have it's healthy. You have moments of you doubt of your gift. Like, I think it's healthy. You're still like, is it still, is it real? Am I making this up? I know it's not, but the imposter syndrome is very, very real. And
Oh,
so
100%.
every time I would doubt, something would just be right there in front of me. And so I was in the plane flying back, and then on a plane, and I was going back, to the end of the plane to the bathroom, and there was a flight attendant, and where I start joking, and you're going back to San Francisco. Do you like it there? And I go, yeah, I love the ocean. That was in my bio too. I'm connecting very much to the water. I'm
Mhm.
a Scorpio rising, which is a water sign, and so she goes, yeah, I'm also very connected to the ocean. Um, but that's not where she goes, the flight attendant. She goes, that's not where I plan to retire. I plan to retire, and I say, to Tucson, Arizona. And she looks at me like, what? Like, what? Like, where is this coming from? And so you know, those are the kind of anecdotes that, always kind of puts you back on track to, okay, I have my gift. My gift is there. I don't need, it's real. And so, kind of going back to my own story, about 2 years ago, after COVID, where a lot of people made a lot of very important changes in their lives, I decided to launch my business as an intuitive, and I just said, okay, this is like a completely new step. I'm gonna be a full-time psychic intuitive, and let's see where that goes. And so we're 2 years later from this experience, and I am pretty much fully booked. Like, I have a lot of regular clients that I enjoy reading through the years. I'm available on different mediums. I go with regular clients, but I'm also available on psychic hotlines, because I think they're, really, this is an excellent school and practice with people you absolutely don't know, that call for 5 minutes, and you have to deliver all the information that you see within 5 minutes. It's a very difficult exercise, but you practice your intuition on steroids when you
Right. Right.
um, so yeah, but this is where I think kind of the topic is all about is, I am fully booked. My time is precious, but I also have to deal with basic functions of a business: marketing, accounting, tax, uh,
Sure. All of it.
all of that. I realized, like, oh wow. And then the mistake that I made as an entrepreneur is, like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs make that mistake. I tried to do it by myself.
Right.
I tried to do my tax on my own. I
Well,
tried to
hold off on that because that's going to be, we're going to get to that a little later because that's part of, so, but okay. So you, you've had this gift for your whole life. Um,
Yep.
and again, well, you said, well, in the bio, you saw your grandmother passing before she passed. And what I think is interesting is that, I knew that I had whatever it is that I have that we're still trying to figure out what the hell that is. I saw my grandmother the night now she had passed away in, I don't know, I guess like 7 years before that. And the night of my bat mitzvah, because I was raised Jewish, she came to me at like 3 o'clock in the morning and freaked me out. Like I wake up and there's my grandmother in the middle of my room, and I'm like, what? And she's in this like blue dress and these white pearls and this whole thing. And she went to hand me something, and I couldn't move. I couldn't, like, I had no voice. I was just like frozen solid. And then finally I like darted out of the room and I ran into my mom. I was like, mom, grandma's in my room. And she just hauled off and whacked me because, that's what she did. And she goes, what are you talking about? And I said, she was in the room, and my mom sewed. So we had a mannequin, and in my room when I was growing up, I had, like a day bed, and then I had like this desk hutch kind of thing. And my mom's mannequin was always on the side of the hutch. So we come back into the room and the mannequin is in the middle of the room. And I was like, I am not going back in that room. And, she's like, no, you're going to sleep. She goes, you put the mannequin there. I'm like, no, I didn't. And then I told her what my grandmother was wearing, and she just like stopped in her tracks. And she's like, what did you say? And I repeated what she was wearing. And there's no way I would have known that because I wasn't at the funeral. I was 6 years old when she died. So, I didn't go to the funeral. And she was just like, okay. So I slept in her room for 2 weeks. And then years later, I found out from my aunt, who has since passed, that everyone in my family had some kind of a gift, but they weren't allowed to explore it. They were allowed to talk about it, so that when, I went to my mom, that's why she freaked out and all that. And then I suppressed it until, recently. But what you do is so, it's almost jarring sometimes because like we'll have the conversation. I'll talk to you about, a prospective client, and you'll be like, oh yeah, yep, like that. And then it's like, oh yeah, like that. And then there's another one and you're like, it's going to happen, but there's going to be a little bit of a delay. And then it freaking happens, but there's a little bit of a delay. I mean, it's just, you're just so right on. And I think it's pretty amazing. So I know, we talked about, sometimes you have to deal with, and probably more times than not, difficult situations because, there's like an unrequited love thing, or, somebody wants you to give them an answer that you can't. How do you reconcile that, like within yourself? How do you deal with it? Because that's got to be hard. I mean,
there's a lot of, when you do this type of job, there's a lot of practice that you need to do to deal with difficult situations. Obviously, for example, the most challenging one is everyone wants to know time. Time. We are humans. Time is a construct, and time controls our life. We're talking today, it takes about an hour, everything is time boxed.
Right.
But in the spirit world, time doesn't exist, right? So people don't quite understand that. But the best way to describe it is, if you spend an hour doing a core, doing something very boring, or an hour with a friend having a drink, that same hour doesn't feel the same. And so obviously that's kind of an explanation why time is very subjective, even though it's not by our construct. So that would be one of the biggest challenge. Another big challenge is to deal with very big difficulties in people's lives, people who have experienced death around them, um, relationships when one of the partner is cheating on the other, and sometimes the client is not aware, and so
I mean, you can't say anything, right? So how the hell do you deal? I mean, that's got to be a rough one.
So it really depends on how the question. I mean, like, it is important for me to have ethics. If people have a question, my job is to deliver the answer in the most compassionate manner.
Right.
The delivery is as important as the information itself.
Right.
So you have to learn how to say certain things a certain way, and also remember that you're here to help, not just provide information, but to help. Another challenge is people not hearing what they came to a psychic because they want a validation for what they think it is, and they love the psychic if the psychic tells them exactly what they think it is, and if
Right.
the psychic tells them something that they didn't expect, it can create like a clash. I would, doesn't happen very often, but someone, you're wrong, would tell me you're wrong. I know very well you're wrong, but then, I would just say, well, I share with you what I see, and if you don't believe it, just put it aside. Like, you don't have to believe me, but you're hiring me so I can tell you what I see. This is what I see.
Right.
Um, so other difficulties, the basic one, there's a few times where you can't see anything. I mean, like, even on your top of it, I mean, you're not on top of your game every single day, like anyone.
Nobody is.
So,
Right.
so there are going to be good days, there's going to be okay days, there's going to be really bad days. Really bad days, then I wouldn't read, because, like, you're in the fog and you have to take this very dangerous road, and it's like, I'm not going to take, and you have okay days where, I think, because I use tools, I use cards, it's not just my intuition. So, on a fantastic day, you're super wired to the other side, you have your tools, and so, like, this is the most pleasurable experience. Like, this is not work when you reach that day. Like, this
Right.
is so much fun. You get the validation from the client, but this is like any job. You have better days than others. Not
Sure.
everything flows, and so it is a little tricky on days where you're not 120%, because people would keep asking and asking the question until they get the answers, and you have to say, that's all I see today. Like, and when you read, you connect with the spirit world. They give you the information that they want to give you, and sometimes they don't want you to know. In other words, it's not that they don't want me to know, they don't want the client to know.
Oh, okay.
They don't want the client to know because they might want that person to go to an experience that is part of her life lesson. And if
Right.
so, but it doesn't happen very often. I would always see something, and sometimes there are times where you see it's not making a lot of sense now, but it will make sense later.
Right. So you worked in corporate before, and you worked pretty high up. And so what made you decide to just go, I'm leaving corporate and I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to become an entrepreneur.
It's the combination of, I think once you've been in the corporate world, there's a moment where I felt like I've seen it all. I've seen the good days, the bad days, the different experiences. After a moment, it kind of feels like it's always the same. And then, when you work for someone, that means that you will always have to accept someone else's decision. There's something in business that's called disagree and commit. You might disagree with the boss, but at the end of the day, you're paid to commit. Right? If this you can argue, but if the decision is made, you have to support the business. If it's your business as an entrepreneur, you live with your own decisions. It's a little bit of a different experience.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And you were starting to go down the road, and I rudely stopped you, but I stopped you for a reason. Um, I say, what advice would you give to somebody thinking about being an entrepreneur? And you were hitting on how, you know, you have to do it all yourself. When was the moment that you realized that shit, I can't do all this myself? I mean,
Like, why am I, spending 5-10 hours of doing a tax return? Well, during those 5-10 hours, I could help someone and make money. It just didn't make sense.
yeah.
And then also, I mean, I think there's also a philosophy that I really believe. Have you heard of Strengths Finder?
Transfinder?
Strength
Oh,
Finder.
Strength Finder. No.
Oh, I'm a big believer. It is a book and a philosophy. I highly recommend it. It starts with a test, and you ask a series of questions, and they will come with your top 5 strengths. And the idea is that, and I really believe in this, like this is like a passion of mine. People in business we always told when we were a kid, you have to improve your weaknesses on your weaknesses.
Right.
I disagree. Forget your weaknesses. They're your weaknesses.
Right.
Use your
Build on your strengths.
Yeah, leverage your strength.
Yep.
Like this is completely. And so that I really believe in that. And so when I was a business leader, I would always look for people's strength to put them in their job that would really put them in and that to me is it. So that's really a very strong philosophy. So if you really apply that philosophy to a business entrepreneur, my strength is not in accounting.
Right. You and me both. Let me tell you.
Yeah. So I apply this very, very much. I think we have to change our paradigm on trying to be good at everything. And like at school, like if you're not good in math, like just forget about it. I know, but so I'm not affiliated with StrengthsFinder, but I'm a big fan.
That's awesome. And it's funny because, I just did, Kofi and I went into the studio a couple of days ago, and, we did batch produced a few videos because we're going to, put them out on LinkedIn and stuff. And one of them was about, when marketers or anybody really, you go to work with a client, it's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing it that way. That's not the right way to do it. And so we're always focusing on the negative. And my belief, and I'm a firm believer in this, is that you build them up. You don't want to tear anybody down, right? You want to look at what they're doing that's good.
Yes.
And then build on that. Be like,
Exactly.
Hey, you know what? You're doing this great. Don't talk about what they're not doing great, because that's what you're going to fix. That's what you're there to fix. Look at what they are doing well and say, you're doing a really good job on this. Let's build on this. Over here, we could fix this, but let's focus on this. Then they feel, it's a positive reinforcement. They feel good about themselves. They don't feel stupid. They're like, oh, I really don't suck after all, Yeah. And so it's the same thing. It's like finding their strengths and then building on it. So I love that. I love that philosophy. I'm gonna have to try that.
Like you need to. This is fascinating, and especially when you start to lead teams, you can really look at the strength of the team as a collective.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
And I kind of believe that in my readings as well. Like, of course, my goal is to give information, like the fundamental of it is, as a fortune teller, is to tell people what I see happening in their future, so they can use this information today to change an outcome. Because that's a big, we still have free will,
Right.
right? We still have free will. And so we have a responsibility. I have clients who say, who should I date? Peter or Paul? No, that's not for me to say. But I could say, if you go with Paul, it's more of a casual relationship. If you go with Peter, that's more of a committed relationship. Your free will is to decide who you want in your life.
Right. So if you want casual, you'll go with Paul, and if you want committed, you'll go with Peter, and there
Yes.
you go. So and I find that piece like kind of fascinating. All my clients know this. Everybody that I work with is a contractor. I don't have any employees, so I put these teams together, per project. And I have a pool of the same people that I pull from for different projects. And we were working on a project for a client, and my designer and my other contractor they just weren't communicating right. Like something was getting lost in translation. And I was like, rather than playing telephone and me talking to this one and then telling her this, I said, let's have a meeting. And then you guys talk, and I'll sit back and I'll learn and I'll listen, but you guys figure it out, and then we'll go from there. And so we finished the meeting, and I sent them both texts. I said, great meeting. I think everything got accomplished that we needed accomplished. And then I got a text back from one of them saying, I said, we're a great team. And, she said, you're a great team leader.
Mm.
And that kind of threw me for a minute, because I didn't I've never looked at it like that. I just look at it as, we have a project. These are the pieces we need to get it done. And, I never, looked at the leadership piece, because I don't know, I guess I just never really thought of that. So it kind of hit me. And then it kind of, it made me go, yeah, Dork, you are leading teams. You are doing this stuff. You should have told me that. No, I'm kidding. But it was just like a really cool moment where, I realized one of my strengths is leading.
Yeah.
And I never would have. Okay, that's not true, because I've never been a follower ever, which is why I have to work for myself, because, at the end of the day, you work for somebody, they want you to do things their way. And it's like, no, it really probably should be done this way. And they don't listen, and then you get fired. So, but, knowing that I wasn't a follower, I guess I never looked at the whole leader piece. So it's put things in a different perspective. So, so there are, seasoned entrepreneurs out here, and I know you've been doing it for 2 years, but, what obstacles have you overcome that, you're doing your thing, and all of a sudden this thing pops up, and, it could stop you from moving forward, but you came through the other side. Like, do you have an example of something that happened like that? Excuse me.
I think the biggest challenge for me is actually not material on an obstacle. Is we're going to talk about Strength Finder. So my number one strength is a maximizer. And so when people say I can give you 4, I feel like I can get 6. Just like, or if we go on a trip and say, oh, I think we can visit 6 cities, I will go for 8. So because I like to push the envelope, I like to find ways to do more with less. I'm passionate about giving 120%. This is a great strength, but this is also a challenge, because I get so excited that I'm not very good with my own boundaries for my personal time, and also kind of work-life balance. And so The challenge, I think, is more on an entrepreneurship, where when you work for yourself, you have to have even more boundaries. I've experienced, and that I'm not very good at. But especially for the type of work that I do, um, the work that I do requires a mind that when I do a reading, it's calm, it's not busy, it's it's connected. Ideally, I meditate a few minutes before to just connect and just feel, get that, quick, you it's hard to be in that mental space and be the entrepreneur at the same time. And so the challenge for me has not been material, but has been time management, boundaries, and self-care.
Wow. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs go through that. I know that the self care piece is um, probably top because, as entrepreneurs, I woke up at 3:14 in the morning this morning because of, something that was going on. And I woke up at 3:14. I did not get back to bed. So I've been up since 3:14 this morning. But we have those moments, and it's like sleep is important, because
It
if you
is.
don't have sleep, right, you're not going to be healthy, and you're going to be a mess, and you're not going to make good decisions because you're too tired. Um, and rest in general.
Yes.
I'm in a group, the Dames, and there's a woman, Donna Ashton, and we haven't met, but she's working on something about a 4-day weekend.
Mm.
And I'm like, hell yes. I mean, I'm not there yet, but absolutely. Because, it was like when I went on vacation, right? Never went on vacation before. And I never unplugged before. And I never knew what it was like to not work, because I've been working since I'm 17 years old, right? And we were 5 hours behind because we were in Hawaii. And I had to make one phone call, and it was 7 o'clock here. And, I actually called Kofi, and, he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just want to let you know this thing came up. And he's like, oh my God, you're in Hawaii. Hang up the phone. But that was it. That was like all the work that I did. And I was so refreshed, when I came back, that it was like, okay, let's do this. And my head was in a different space. And I think it's really, self-care is really up there. It's really important.
Yeah. And then also, I believe in no matter what your business is, but you also need time for innovation. So in my world, like, I'm using cards to read, but there's so many other tools, and I want to learn different methods. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that there is no business if we as entrepreneurs are not learning, because otherwise we turn into a machine, but we're not, getting new juice to feed us. And so it starts to get dry very quickly. And so innovation, learning, finding new things, reading books about or listening to podcasts, just to open the mind. And that, I think, is very, very important. So it's a kind of a different dimension than self-care, but it's very key.
So it's like continued education, right? So
Absolutely.
are there, and this may be like one of the dumbest questions I've ever asked, are there like psychic conventions? Like, do you have like conventions where you go and people, I'm not going to laugh, but so for people listening, he's kind of smiling right now, but I mean, I don't, it's not my world. So are there, conventions or events where, new technique is introduced, or is it just that the way it's been done all forever is just how it's done?
Oh, this is funny, because the reason I'm smiling is because I am currently in a WhatsApp group for a business project, and we're a number of psychics, and there's one person who is not, but who's managing the group for particular projects. And so yesterday, I was about to respond to one of the psychic, and she said word for word the words that I said at the same time. We kind of read each other, and I said, "Oh, I made a joke in the group." And I said, "Yeah, this is what happens with you're in a group of psychics. Everyone reads each other's mind."
Right.
And then the person managing the group said, "Oh my God, I can't imagine what it would be to have a psychic convention."
Convention.
Like,
Jeez. Okay, so
so
I guess that's a no.
uh, there are meetings. There's actually lots of groups that are theme based. I'm a member of a community that is more around rituals. I'm a member of a community more about tarot. I'm also into communities that are more about energy work. So all of those like have a digital presence of a group presence. But yeah, they're really, really fun. Like, I mean, like, I guess, like, when you're passionate about something and you're like with a group of people who share the same passion, it's
Right.
just, um, but I don't think it's any different than that. Like, like a sports convention or a marketing convention. It's kind of like, I think you just, it's, it's kind of funny sometimes because there's a joke that always runs in those group meetings. Something unexpected would happen, and it's like, how come no one saw that
Oh,
coming?
yeah, we didn't see
Oh,
that
wait a
coming.
minute,
Yeah.
like, isn't that ouch? But there's always that joke that when you're practicing a job or field, like for example, like it's very hard to read for yourself. It's very hard to see things for yourself.
Yeah.
And there's tools for that. So you don't reading for oneself. You have to do the reading for you at the third person and asking the
Which
question
is what you
as if
told me, like, what does Iris
yeah.
need today?
But
What,
this is it's a mental gymnastics that's not easy versus if you just meet someone that just you open it, because I am fortunate that I don't open it all the time. Like, I can have social activities and get no messages whatsoever. It's like the light switch is turned off. I don't even do it consciously. Like, if I want to see a show, I just don't like. I rarely would get messages or at the restaurant, but if I open a little bit, then those messages will start to come. But I don't want to do that. Like, imagine in an airplane, you sit next, which of course that happened. You sit next to someone and you're like, "You're a doctor?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, and it's just like so awkward. Like,
like, how'd you know? Yeah.
how do you know? And there's like, because it's still a little bit taboo. Like, some people would freak out a little bit, and that's
Well, they call it woo woo, right? And
yes. And so how do you, so I mean, that's another big topic, is bringing the intuitive side into the business. Um, and it's like, I haven't done that very well. Like, I have skills that I should use for myself, for my business, but I don't really use it. Again, like, doing things for yourself is much more difficult than for others.
right. I remember when so I work with a mindfulness coach, and she'll pull a card for me. So I went out and I bought a bunch of different decks and stuff, and we I started pulling 2 cards a day for myself, but doing it the way that you said, what does Iris, need today or whatever. And yesterday we started doing a vision board. And so I pulled, these cards out, and the first one was, Archangel Michael, you're protected. And then there was like, trustworthy friends, and then synchronicity and study and learning. And then I got change and transition, which is the Archangel Azrael, who's the guy that helps you cross over. So of course I freaked out and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And she's like, that's probably not what that means. And, because of all of my health stuff, right, with that the COVID crap. So I'm like, oh my God. So that was when I sent you a message. I'm like, are you available? Because I was like, oh my God, I got this, thing. And then this morning I pulled a card from a different deck and it said visions of life beyond death. And I'm like, what in the hell are you trying to tell me? So I pulled that out, and that was about, something having to die to, and not me dying, but, something that I'm working on or something that I'm doing, needs to, and we'll talk about that after this, but, and I was like, oh, whew, okay. But, it's like when you do read for yourself, you can misinterpret stuff and it can really screw your day up.
Yeah.
Because, yesterday I was like, okay, what does that mean? How long do I have? What is this? I got to talk to Nate. And like my wife laughs at me because, she knows that we talk. At first I wasn't going to say anything. Then I was like, I'm very transparent. And I said, yeah, so I'm talking to Nate and he's a psychic. And she goes, of course you are. But I told her about our rapport, and I think it goes beyond, just the reading. But like I said, you have this easy way about you that even if you're, because, a couple of things you told me were like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen, or, whatever. But, you have a way of saying it to where it's not crushing. It's not like, oh God, I'm just like, whatever. And so, I mean, that's what I love about, working with you. So what would you say is your differentiator? What makes you different? Because there's like 1,000 people who call themselves psychics, right? I mean, at the end of the day. And there are some good ones out there. There are some complete fakes. I mean, I remember I spoke to somebody, oh God, this was like, I don't know, 10 years ago. And my friends were like, oh, we're going for a reading. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I knew as soon as I sat down, because I feel things, and you know that, right? So I sat down and I was like, oh, I already know where this is going, And so she does this reading and I looked at her and I said, how do you do this in good conscience? Good conscience. And she just like kind of looked at me and I said, I don't read, but I feel. And, I didn't let her read me. And, and I told my friends, I'm like, this is not,
Yeah.
Go, you do what you think you need to do. But I knew it wasn't real. So I know what makes you different, but, in your words, like what makes you different from other?
Yeah. I mean, like my style of reading is based on precise information. You can call it accuracy, but I like precise information. In other words, like I am not the type of reader that would start like saying, okay, you're going through a phase, there will be changes, you're going to feel this energy. More on the psychological side of things. I can do that, but that's not what I like to do best. I like to answer quick and precise question and answer them very quickly and precisely. And so one of, I believe, my differentiators is that very often, this happened again today, people run out of questions. They book 30 minutes, we're 25 minutes, and they're like, I don't have any other questions. I think that says about, kind of like the degree of information you get and kind of getting straight to the point, but with a compassionate delivery. Like, because I want the delivery to be compassionate, but I want to answer the question. And so if someone asks, how much will I sell my house for? I want to give an answer. But it's just a fact. A lot of people can't do that. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be spot on, but I will answer either, I mean, not necessarily with a number, but saying it's more than this, or it's less than this, it's less than you expect. Like, I want to guide the person to say, and then also I want to I want to give. I believe in. I talk about free will, but I wanted the person to leave with something that they can do about the situation. Like the worst nightmare for me would say, "This is what's going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. You have to accept
Ah,
fate."
yeah.
That's just not me. I'm an optimist, so I always believe that we always can do something about it, and that's probably why I like business readings, even though that's not the bulk of what I do. But I do love business readings because it has this practical side to it. And then also, um, there's a word that I like to use is evidential reading, in a
Okay.
sense
I like that.
of you know what, you're asking me a question, I give you a prediction, it's true or false. So measure me to my prediction, and we'll see. And so that I think is things that I'm attached to. And so I would say that another thing that I'm passionate about, but I do with precautions, and it depends when and depends who, is anything medical. Um, Obviously, there's legal framework
Oh,
around
of
it,
course. Yeah.
and I'm not a doctor, so I have to say all the right things. But within the legal framework, people understanding like it's for entertainment purposes only and all of that, I am passionate about it, also from the point of view of helping people. And there's a whole, that's not my, it's more something I'm passionate, but there's a whole group of medical intuitives that I think we don't necessarily look at. But my recommendation for someone who has a health question, in addition to go to their regular doctor, to actually go towards a medical intuitive, because that's an area where um, we don't use. I have a regular Western medicine doctor, and I have a doctor who's a pro as using a pendulum, and I can call him and he would find exactly where the problem is. So why not?
Wow. I know because of you, I went out and got a pendulum. So, I mean, well, and it's interesting. And, you know, um, I work with, I work with you. I have my mindfulness coach. I have a soul language coach that I'm working with, and she was actually on yesterday. Um, and I'm doing like a lot of spiritual work because whatever it is calling to me, and I need to just kind of go with it. So I'm going with it. What the hell was I gonna? I was gonna say something now. I forgot. What? Oh, the pendulum. So I said, yeah. I said, I've been pulling cards and stuff, and she said, ask instead of asking, what desirous need today, ask what is going to be the outcome for the greater good, for whatever. And I went, oh, okay, that makes it less selfish, right?
Yes.
And I'm always looking to see how I can help. I mean, the whole reason I got into business was, to help people. And, yes, of course I want to make money, but I'm not going to work with somebody if I don't think I can help them.
Yeah.
That's just telling them to light their money on fire. And that's not what I'm about. I truly want to see people succeed. And if I feel that I can help you succeed, then I'm going to say, hey, let's work together. And if I don't feel that I can get you to where you need to go, I'm not going to. I have to sleep at night, number one. And, I have a reputation, and, it's good. And it's good because people know that I come from a place of, integrity, and
Yeah.
I will tell somebody the truth, whether they want to hear it or not, because if I don't, then I'm doing a disservice, right? If there's something that's not working, I got to tell you it's not working, because, we got to fix it, or, whatever. So, but I find it fascinating that just how right it's like, you've just been so freaking accurate. It just always, like, I know what's going to happen. I know I'm going to ask you a question, and whatever it is, you know, I can pretty much, I could probably bet $1,000 and know that it's, it's going to work. I haven't done that. So, but not promoting gambling, even though everywhere you go, there's a sports gambling site, but that's a whole nother story.
Oh
We're,
yeah.
we're like watching the NFL and there's like DraftKings and all this thing. And I'm like, when did all of that stuff like become legal? But it did. It's like kind of crazy. Oh, and how many people ask you if, for the lottery numbers? That's,
Oh my God.
I
I
mean,
had a client send me a sheet to actually fill in for her. I mean,
shut up.
no,
And you're like, hell,
yeah,
if I knew that, I would.
no.
Gosh.
Now, I mean, I can tell you what to do to increase your luck. That's a completely different point of view.
Right.
If I would recommend the person, if they feel connected, to use a pendulum to go around each number and use. I mean, yes, there's certain things you can do, but this is not. Spirit's just not very good there. Same thing with politics. Predicting an outcome or vote. It's predicting, what millions of people will vote for each
Right.
individually. It's very hard to do.
Right. We had that conversation.
Yeah.
And and we were half right. So
We were half right.
we were half right. But
But this is also an example where
it's everybody's free will. You can't,
Yeah.
I mean,
Plus, if you're like have a strong opinion about something, it's very hard to read because your emotional connection just gonna cloud the whole thing and it's gonna show you what you want to see. It's your mind. It's exactly, there's a connection with meditation and mindfulness in a sense that when you read, you have to clear your mind. And connect to whatever comes to you. And sometimes what comes doesn't make sense, but it will make sense for the client.
Yeah.
But it's scary. Like they ask a question and the information that comes is like, it's not even within that framework of answer. And what do you do? And most of the time I share the information, because the few times that I didn't, I found out later that I should have. It was on point, but it is just so weird. Like, it's making no sense. But you have to trust. There's a trust aspect. Like you're hearing the message, you're a vessel, you deliver the message.
Wow.
There's always like the fear the client's gonna say, what?
Wow. Well, first off, I want to thank. We're almost at an hour. I told you it goes.
I can't believe.
Well, we could always talk anyway. We could talk for we have spoken for hours, which is like crazy. But I want to thank you for taking the time to let the audience, let my audience get to meet you and know you. And Nate's website is it's scrolling, but for those of you who can't see it, it's thethirdwish.net. He's got a lot of cool stuff on there, and he has a shop that I didn't know, so I'm going to be spending some money after this. But we'll talk about that too. So, so the last question that I ask all of my guests is, what lights your fire? And it can be personal, professional, whatever. What are you really passionate about? Like, what gets you going?
Oh, I like anything that triggers like an emotional reaction. For me is mostly music, going to a concert, going to an event live, being in the moment, that sense of living that moment right in this second, whether you on a trip somewhere, whether you're with someone special, whether you connect to something that gives you an emotion, a movie, a song. But to me, like that split second where you are fully in the moment, I don't think there's anything better than that.
That's awesome. And I think the thing with that is we're so very little in that moment, right? We don't allow ourselves to see and be in that moment. So the fact that you can find, I think that's amazing.
It is I think, we talk about the present being a gift. Like, to me, that word resonates a lot to me, because also being a psychic, you know what was behind you, you know what's coming in front of you, and how grateful you are for the present, which is kind of a paradox, because from a psychic is like the gift of seeing the future but enjoying the present.
Right. But you know, the fact that you can enjoy the present, right? That you can stop and smell the roses, for, you know, lack of a better, you know, analogy. But well, cool. So thank you so much for taking the time. This has been really awesome. And for everybody listening, really, I hope that you've gotten something from this, because he's, you know, Nate's pretty awesome. And you know, I appreciate you all listening. And I know that, you know, I said this last time, that it seems like this is taking a little bit of a turn, because it's about entrepreneurs and, you know, the journey to how they got to where they are. And, you know, I'm finding that it's so story based, because every entrepreneur's story is different. It's, you know, and their experiences are different. So, you know, we went from having, you know, people who just, you know, worked in corporate, and, you know, they just, it was time for them to start their own business, to somebody who was in an abusive relationship, who, you know, knew that she had to get out. And so, you know, she started her own thing, to having a medium, you know, a psychic who worked in corporate and knew that, you know, he had to get out and start his own business and become an entrepreneur. So I love, God, I love this so much, because you just learn so many different things. And I really hope that, you know, everybody listening, I know people are listening while they're out skiing and, you know, doing all these things, and working out and cooking and, you know, walking, and just, you know, whatever it is that you're doing. I really thank you for listening. And, you know, I hope you're getting really good nuggets out of this. And I say this all the time: if you're getting a good nugget, you know, share it with somebody who you think may, you know, may get the same nugget from this, or, you know, different nuggets. You know, share it, you know, like, subscribe. When you subscribe, you get notification that there's a new episode out, and you never know what you never know what it's going to be about. That's like what I love about this, is everyone out there has no idea, you know, who my guest is going to be, what their story is. And that is what I love about this. So thank you all for, you know, sticking with this, and for tuning in, and for listening and subscribing. And until next time, go out and find what lights your fire. See you, everyone. Bye.